It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. Today's date is Tuesday. So happy it's Tuesday, John. So happy it's Tuesday.
S-H-I something.
That's right. So happy it's Tuesday. And this is the B Block. I'm sorry, the wheels are coming off a little bit. My youngest son's, I shouldn't say that. Well, I normally say my family member, but my youngest son, I've talked about this before, has some health issues. And as a parent, John, I can tell you, you've got young kids. Mine are all adult kids. It just never stops about parents worrying about their kids. You know what I'm saying?
All right, that's a great fatherly instinct, Brad, and that's so much more important than my garrulous meanderings on this show. Now, I think a close second would be, it's time for Brad's Top 3.
It is time for Brad's Top 3, and we started off with, hold on a minute, is this right? Hold on a minute.
It's time for Brad's Top 3.
Man, I'm a mess this morning, John. I'm sorry.
It's all right, Brad.
One more time, ladies, sing it.
It's time for Brad's Top. It's number 3.
John, don't ask me how this happened, but yesterday on my phone, it's so weird because of the fact that you talked about it this morning, and I thought it was sort of interesting about the St. Louis City School thing. A article appeared on my phone. I don't know how. I don't know if I saved it or something like that. It was the St. Louis Public Radio from a few months back that talked about the situation at that point in time. I don't think Keisha Scarlett had been officially let go. I think this was the result of the audit. And the thing that caught my attention was St. Louis Public Radio, they published her bank statement for her charge cards, for her official district, I guess you'd call it like a debit card, she had an official district debit card, and then she had...
Yeah, I bet there were some gems in there.
Then she had another card that was paid for by the school district, but it wasn't, I guess it was like her personal card. I don't know if the superintendents have like a certain amount of personal money they can do. And it was page after page after page of stuff. I'm going like, what the hell is that? And you look at the Southwest Airlines tickets, and to the point where I guess as a superintendent, you got to go to lots of, conventions and things like that, which I think to myself, I don't know about that. John, if things are going well, I'm going to ask you a question. Okay, let's go back to your days at Monsanto. And if everything was cruising along and everything was fine, your boss may go on some convention junkets, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
But when the stuff was as Shelley would say,
Shelley Barr says, what does it have to do with a rotating oscillator?
When the excrement impacts the rotating oscillator, would your boss be doing those junkets out of town all the time, or would he be sort of, hunkered down and trying to deal with some issues? Which would it be, John?
The latter, Brad. And as a 15-second anecdote, when I joined Monsanto in the summer of 2008, one of my first trips was going to be to India. Take a couple weeks, go to see India, see what some of our issues there. And then maybe 2 weeks later, my boss was like, hey, that trip to India, we're not going to do that because we got some financial trouble coming up. I'm like, what are you talking about? The company, Brad, the stock was at an all-time high. The company had never made more money. And my boss was like, yeah, in 9 months, we're going to see like a real downturn in Roundup sales. We're going to be selling less seed. I'm like, who possibly knows that? Brad, in 9 months, the company took a dive south. And my, 10-grand trip to India, in the scheme of things, wasn't much. But people at my company knew, look, in 9 months, it's not going to be good. That Combest kid's not going to go to India. You get what I'm saying? Somebody with common sense can forecast things aren't going well and say, we need to cut out this frivolous spending.
John, exactly. I mean, all the trips she's taking, and then there's all these charges. I guess they were membership fees or something like that to some organizations or groups she belonged to, but a ton of personal stuff. Amazon stuff, Walter Knoll Florist. I mean, I sat there and looked through it. I'm not Mr. Detail-oriented. You know that about me. But I went through page after page after page, and I thought to myself, holy cow. And it's to the point where I'm thinking to myself, okay, I have been in situations, I've worked for myself for a long time, 41 plus years now, but there were times when I worked for companies and I was always sort of Scrooge McDuck with the company's money. I was the guy who was saying, hey, we don't need to buy that new whatever it was. We've got one that we think we can fix. Matter of fact, I don't know if I ever told you this stupid story, but when I went to school for my master's degree at Lindenwood, Lindenwood was not doing well at the time, and I paid. I got a work study thing. I actually did engineering at the campus radio station KCLC, and my job was, we had no budget whatsoever, zero budget. My job was taking 3 pieces of equipment that were broken and turning them hopefully into 2, and most of the time into 1 piece of equipment, because I would scavenge parts out of the 3 different ones to make 1 good one. Okay, I know how to pinch a penny. You know what I'm saying, John?
I get it, Brad. Yeah, absolutely you do.
And to this day, I still am that way. I mean, I drive an old clunky car. I got a car that just turned 325,000 miles. Most of the equipment we have at the radio station is secondhand. Matter of fact, I'm looking at this nice board, which once upon a time cost $20,000. I paid $500 for it. You know, that kind of a thing. And to me, it's a different magnitude when you're spending corporate money, which is shareholders and things like that. But when you're spending the taxpayers' money, and the taxpayers' money being sacred money in that it's supposed to educate our kids, I have, shall we say, a zero tolerance for that. You know what I'm saying?
I get all of that. And if you're Tisha, you would probably look at it and say, well, those flowers from Walter Knoll
Right.
were for our secretary, Clarice Washington, who had served as secretary for 807 years. Are you telling me she doesn't deserve her flowers?
You know, she's making what? She was making like $250,000 a year. She couldn't do that on her own dime. You know what I'm saying?
Great point, Brad. That's exactly what I would say.
You know what I'm saying? She can't spend $50 with Walter Knoll florist to whatever it was. Hey, by the way, we got a correction yesterday, and I don't know, the person that corrected me normally is right. We talked about the fact that Melissa Borishade, which we've been corrected the pronunciation.
Yeah.
We said she was like walking away with like $750,000.
Yeah.
My source says it's only $281,000. Do you know anything about that?
No. So in the Blythe Bernard piece today, it reads, Borishade will receive about $750,000 in remaining salary plus health benefits. So maybe the person who sent the note is reminding you that her annual salary is $281,000. Borishade will still receive $750,000 because her contract is through June 2028.
But if you essentially are fired for cause, doesn't that sort of void your contract?
She was fired without cause.
Okay, whatever. Okay, we have to move on to number 2. Here we go.
It's time for Brad's number 2. It's time for Brad's number 2.
Have you by any chance seen the video of Trump in the airplane, the fighter jet, with him wearing the crown on his helmet, dumping?
I have not seen this. No, I saw on the day he did at least tweet a picture of himself with the crown, but I didn't watch the video.
Okay, the video is the reason why it's become high profile is that supposedly the music behind the video is Kenny Loggins' "Danger Zone," which was one of the songs from the original Top Gun version 1 soundtrack. Okay,
yeah, of course it was.
So I found the video online, and unless it's the world's worst karaoke version of Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins, I don't hear it. I mean, to me, it's like, okay, that's not, I thought for sure it was going to be, like Kenny, fly me to the danger zone, do-do-do. I never heard any of that. Now, maybe they restrip
remix. Maybe there's a couple remixes of it.
But the video is so funny because, and I didn't know this either, because he takes off and he's flying a fighter and he hits a button and the bomb bay doors open. And it's interesting. The article I read called it sludge was being dropped.
Yeah, like brain sludge. That's good. Like
Yes.
I referred to a lot of your stuff, Brad, very respectfully as AI slop. Or sometimes boomer AI slop.
Not the one
But just like general AI nonsense. I think sludge is a good way to describe it.
Yeah, but it was poop. That's what it was. And the interesting part of it was, I didn't realize it. The first poop falls on some guy who's apparently some well-known liberal blogger. I never heard of the guy. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know that. I haven't seen it, so I'm not sure.
You need to watch it.
Yeah, I'll look it up, Brad. I'll actually watch this.
It's so funny. And everybody's got their panties in a bind over this. Oh, my God, this is the president. Okay, you know what this tells me? First off, the White House did not do this. These things he posts on his various Truth Social and his X account and stuff like that. These are memes that are sent to him. You know what I mean? He's not.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure.
There's not government employees putting together this stuff, or maybe there are. I don't know. If they are, it's gonna be like, okay, what? Maybe they should talk to Keisha Scarlett about that. But anyway, to me, it's so funny, and they're going like, oh my God, I can't believe he did this. The president. How demeaning is this? You know what? My boss, I told you this a long time ago, one of my very first bosses in radio told me, there's 3 impressions you can make in life, good, bad, and none. And none is always the worst. You know what I'm saying?
That's right, Brad. That's exactly right.
Okay, last but not least.
And now, big finish, Brad's number.
Remember how during the Biden administration, where we were repeatedly told that there are no illegal immigrants voting in the United States. Remember that? Oh,
yeah, there's none. There's none.
This morning it comes out that Texas has essentially come up with a list of over 2,000 people who are illegal immigrants who are on the voting rolls in Texas. And keep in mind, the superintendent of Des Moines, who was an illegal immigrant, was registered to vote in Maryland. So and it's to the point where, remember, we talked about this. Matter of fact, it's funny. There was a best of show of our show playing, and I talked about this. You and I talked about this, the fact that there was one of the, this is going back several months. I think it might have been even last year when one of the Biden officials saying, he was on NPR. There's no record of any illegal immigrants who are terrorists crossing the border. How do they know? If they don't know.
They have no idea.
If they don't know who the people are crossing the border, how do they know if they're terrorists or not? Okay? And the thing on this is that the thing in Texas is they're doing a cross match. Essentially, that's how they found these people. They're doing a computer cross match between the voter rolls in Texas, and apparently they've got some United States database they can cross match this to. I've heard there's a program, and I can't remember what this is. Somebody told me about this, and I found it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know. You have mentioned it on the air before, Brad. I can't think of the name of it, though.
Yes, it's some program that the federal government has that they allow the states to access, where they can do a computer cross match between the voter rolls in their state and illegal immigrants, and it flags people who they think are the same. Now, there in Spanish surnames, there's got to be a lot of Joe Smiths and a lot of Jill Smiths and stuff like that, and Bob Jones and things like that. But he just, what's frustrating to me, being a journalist kind of guy, it's frustrating because of the fact that we have our trusted sources, and once again, when I listen to NPR, they keep telling me about their news is fact-based. And I'm thinking to myself, what facts are they using? You know what I'm saying? Right? Fact-based. Whose facts are you using? It just drives me nuts. Okay, that's my top 3. Now, I still got a couple minutes. Can I briefly discuss something that has become sort of bothersome to me, especially after I read...
Yeah, please do, Brad.
The Rennie Knott thing. Are you up on this?
Yes, Brad. I am so glad you mentioned this because I didn't read the story yet, but as I understand it, St. Louis Magazine and Sarah Fenske had a story about what allegedly happened with Rennie.
Yes, and I will say this. There's 2 sides to every story. There's Rennie's side, and then there's the other side. And the thing that bothers me most about this is the fingerprints of young journalists. And remember, I was talking about this, that it used to be to the point where if you ended up at a TV station in St. Louis, and specifically Channel 5, Channel 4, one of the biggies, even Channel 2, you typically had to have a degree in journalism and typically 5 to 10 years of experience in some of the smaller markets, okay? The business has changed. They're not paying the big bucks anymore. So they're, to a certain extent, they are now in St. Louis hiring people directly out of J School. And if you know what's going on in the J schools around the country, Mizzou is probably no different. They're being indoctrinated into a different form of journalism than my professor. And have I mentioned Camille Winter lately, John?
No, you had. I thought his name was Cammy Summer.
Camille Winter. See, when I read this article, you know what I thought of first off?
Did you think of Dr. Camille Winter?
No, I thought of
Did you think of Don Marsh?
Exactly. I thought of Don Marsh.
Same situation, right? So we have a few minutes here, Brad. You and I speculated last week that maybe Rennie was just too expensive and he got nudged out, but it turns out that that's not the case.
Well, there are employees, and the interesting part of the story that I heard this the other day, and this was confirmed in the St. Louis Magazine. Boy, Sarah Fensky and her partner, what's his name? Good guy.
Who's that, Brad?
Her partner, Sarah Fensky's partner. Who's the guy who's riding with her?
Ryan Cole.
Ryan, okay. They said that Rennie was being groomed to take over the 5 o'clock p.m. newscast, and that was ultimately a switch with with the upcoming retirement of Mike Bush, and that he was going to be the new primetime anchor, that they were going to take him off the morning show, put him in the 5 o'clock newscast, and then he was going to ultimately, when Mike Bush retired, he was going to take over the 6 and the 10 o'clock newscast, which is, in the news business, those are the big casts. Those are that's where your prime talent lies, at 6 and 10 o'clock. And the bizarre part of this is, there's all these people, underlings, saying, oh, Rennie talked about getting his AK-47, and Rennie talked about stabbing people. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. And the crazy part of this is, I don't know about you. I personally know of a couple of people that have worked with Rennie Knott, and they told me there is no better human being on the planet Earth. Now, that's what they told me. I never worked with the guy. But it sure sounds like the Don Marsh thing, where and the other part of the story was, the reason that he was not put on the 5 o'clock newscast is because some of the staff members on the 5 newscast, we don't want Rennie. So I'm thinking to myself, there's only two ways this can go. Rennie's telling the truth, or the staffers at Channel 5 are telling the truth. And I have to be honest with you, judging from the Don Marsh thing, and for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Don Marsh, who retired from Channel 2 a long time ago, took the job and he did the noon show on KWMU. And by the way, I have to admit that he just didn't quite measure up to Elaine Cha. I mean, he tried his best, but he just is not good as
right.
Elaine Cha.
And what happened with him was?
One day, Karen Foss, who was essentially his competition because he was at Channel 2, Karen Foss was the premier anchor in St. Louis at Channel 5. One day, Karen Foss was invited as a guest to be on the show, on the noon show.
At age 70, right?
At age 70, on the KWMU noon show, what do they call it? I don't know what they call it, the noon show. And as she came into the studio, this was not even done on air, what was the quote, John? You remember this real well. He looked at her and said,
"You look great."
Yes. And a
woman heard that in the studio, a young woman who I believe was in her either late 20s or early 30s, and noted that Mr. Marsh should not be making observations about a woman's looks.
And reported to HR. And he was called into the boss's office and confronted with this, and he said, "I'm out of here, AMF," right?
AMF, that's right. What he said, AMF.
And I'm thinking to myself, I always liked Don Marsh. After that, I like Don Marsh.
You like him
even
better. And as a coda to this, Karen Foss, when asked about it later, said she felt a tremendous amount of guilt about what happened, and said there was nothing untoward about what Don Marsh said. And in fact, she volunteered to say, she said, at our age, when you see someone who's your peer, who's your age at a certain age, and they look good, you say, "Wow, you look great."
John, trust me, I'm there right now.
You know, Brad. I mean, let's just say you're of a certain age.
I'm of a certain age, and when I do run into one of my compatriots from back in the day, and especially if it's a female, and they do look good, I will always compliment them. But that's just me, and I get myself in trouble because I told you I've taken on this new thing. I'm tired of all the negative energy. I'm tired of all, well, he's a real jerk. He's a terrible person. I don't do that anymore. If I do, I catch myself, and I try to say, I'm not doing that anymore. But this whole crazy thing, you would think that with all the things that have changed since Trump's come in, that the wokeness would have worn off, but it doesn't seem like it have, does it?
No, and you know what? Rennie is a successful older gentleman, and there's certainly people that would look at that and say, well, he's part of the patriarchy, and he can't make a joke about violence. Gun violence is nothing to joke about. By the way, I should point out, I was incorrect. The gentleman's name is Ryan Kroll. There is an R in there. Brad, usually you don't have an R in anybody's name, That's a partisan joke. Anyway, Ryan Kroll is the gentleman's name. And Rennie apparently said something about that could be misinterpreted as a threat against coworkers because people were apparently driving him nuts. And so that's why he was pushed out. And Tegna, the nondescript name company, apparently says that they have a, quote, zero tolerance policy about workplace violence.
John, you know the crazy thing about this is if you were to go down, and the Blues are now back in season, I think they start tonight or tomorrow night, they start the new season. If you would hang out in the locker room, and hockey players are notorious for, shall we call it, sharp elbows, to put it nicely.
Yeah, it's a great expression, Brad.
Right. Hockey players, they live their life by dissing their fellow teammates, okay? And to the point where I don't think if you enforce the same rules that you have in corporate life, I don't think the St. Louis Blues would have any players left because they'd all be fired for discrimination, right?
Brad, I think the problem is you, your fellow men, and your locker room humor. This is literally the problem with America and your toxic masculinity.
John, unfortunately, you're right. It is sad. Okay, I did talk to Mike Elam yesterday, and I told him I'd call him this morning, and I told him we will not talk about election. Is that okay with you, John?
Yeah, that's great, Brad.
Okay,